So, Adiba, thank you for joining us today. This is a collaboration for the Leeds Literacy Festival. So, I suppose, first of all, I'll get you to introduce yourself and talk about your latest book for us and just give us like a 30-second, 1 minute overview about it, if you could.
So thank you so much for having me, first of all. I'm Adiba Jagardar, and I'm the author of Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating. So this is a book, it's a rom-com. It's about these two Bengali girls, Honey and Issue, and they decide to start fake dating. Honey because she wants to validate her bisexuality to her friends, and Issue because she wants to become head girl in school and impress her parents. But as their fake dating turns into something real, they need to figure out if they're willing to make some sacrifices in order to get there happily ever after.
Absolutely. And what a journey it is. It took so many twists and turns throughout the story that I didn't see come in. I hoped kind of would in it, but we've already said we're not going to do any spoilers to this, but no doubt there'll be some hints dropped throughout it. Um, so in previous interviews, I know you've said I'm a writer that loves writing about brown queer girls. Talk to us about the importance of these stories, or for for both of your books. We've got them both here, the Hen Awards as well. But the importance of having um, that content within our community and what it means for you. And I know you're a teacher, so what has that content meant for the pupils that you see that have those reactions to them as well?
So, when I was younger, when I was a teenager myself, I never read books about, I mean, brown people in general, let alone, queer brown people. So it was definitely something that I felt was missing. And I think because of that, for a long time, it was difficult for me to kind of accept my culture, my faith, just myself fully as who I was. Like, it just means a lot to kind of get to write these books, and to actually feel that I myself am represented, because until I wrote the book for myself, I didn't feel like I had a voice, that I was represented in these books. Um, in terms of being a teacher, I actually teach ESL. So I teach a lot of the times adults, although, a lot of like young adults as well. Something that was really great for me was that as an ESL teacher, I actually had a lot of Brazilian students. And so with the Henna Wars, as there's the Brazilian love interest. And in Dublin, Ireland, we have a really big Brazilian population. They're probably like one of the biggest immigrant populations here right now. Honestly, like, that character definitely came from a lot from my students, because as a teacher, your students share so much about themselves with you. They share so much of their culture, and their beliefs and who they are. And so a lot of that definitely went into that book, and probably also this book. I feel very privileged to have been a teacher, because you just meet so many people, and like being able to build characters after you meet those people, it's like a different experience.
Okay, excellent. And just going off on something you were touching at the beginning there, what I found really interesting about this title as well is, I imagine going into the book, you could quite easily whitewash. Oh, two Bengali girls, they're going to have exactly the same faith, they're going to have exactly the same cultural pieces, and actually there's a huge shock for anybody who doesn't know enough about the culture, which is great because you're going, oh right, so one has a quite religious family. I mean, there's a discussion in there where one's where Hanny and Isha are talking, and they're like, well, so do you not believe in God? Like, well, no, not really. And it's like, I was like, my jaw was like, oh wow, okay. And like, it wasn't even a, oh well, I don't know, or I'm thinking about it. And actually, it shows even from the same destination in the world that actually we can't whitewash some of these beliefs that we have, not the beliefs that they have, but the beliefs that we have about areas of the world or about people. And I love how, I mean, on so many different levels, you've looked at that throughout the book, and they're extremely different characters. One's obviously very introvert, a little bit shy, follows the movement of a not so lovely friends, as we've discussed. Where the other one she's very, listen, this is what I'm like, take it or leave it. I'm not going to change for you. And I really loved how that aspect was brought in into them as well. Um, so talking about that whitewashing, um, you've written throughout the book that her friends whitewash her, that we're not really going to engage with your cultural piece. I mean, to the point that I'm not even going to learn your name correctly. So we're going to give you another name that British people can or Irish people can deal with a lot easier. So give us a little bit of info around how you shaped those friends to kind of, I suppose, to challenge me, to challenge every other white person who doesn't step out of their box to learn about other people.
Yeah, so I think growing up in Ireland for me, I moved to Ireland when I was 10 years old. I think in 2003. So at the time, Ireland was extremely white. It's still very white, but it is a little bit more cosmopolitan now. So I definitely had that experience that Honey had, where she, grew up around whiteness. So I think for a lot of people, when they kind of grow up like that, they are told that they have to make themselves smaller in order to fit in. And I mean, I'm sure teens can be very cruel. Just in general, they can be very cruel, unfortunately. And they're especially cruel when you're a little bit different. So, when you are brown, when
Target
you're,
piece. Yeah.
sorry?
A target piece. It's an easy target, I suppose.
Exactly, yes. So I think, for somebody like Honey or somebody like me, being Bangladeshi, being Muslim, being queer, being so many things that mark you as different, you always feel like you have to stifle that. You have to, just push all of those things down as far as you can. So obviously, Honey can't like not be brown. It's very, very visible. So then she tries to do what she can to make those more invisible things, smaller. So she tries to make her Muslim self very, very small. That's one of the things that she can do. So she does. I think that's just a very familiar thing for a lot of people, especially those people who, grow up around whiteness. So I just wanted to write that very authentically, just because it had been my experience growing up here. And I know it's been the experience of a lot of other people growing up, all over the world. So these characters, these white friends, definitely came from, a lot of people that I have known in my life, a lot of experiences of friendship that I've had. And I think for me, it was interesting writing this because when it comes to exploring friendship in YA, I do think there's like kind of like a gap. Because we do have, yes, explorations of friendship, but not so much about toxic friendships that do come from racism, homophobia, Islamophobia. And so many of us who are marginalized have this experience where, like we come out to our friends and they don't want to accept us, or they want us to be different. Or, we are Muslim or we're brown and they want to stifle those parts of our identities. So for me, it's just a reality. I know that is for a lot of people. It has been for me. So I just build these characters from those experiences.
Okay. And what about the parent side of this? Because one part I really loved, like going into this, I thought to myself, oh, when we get to the conversations with the Muslim family, the Muslim family, when it comes to sexuality, is there going to be pushback? Is there going to be challenging? How's the acceptance? But the way that you've written there's enough challenges in the book that this one is created in a really positive way. Was that to say to other Muslim queer people out there, actually, like it can be an accepting part of our religion and our culture. It isn't always necessarily something that you're going to get a pushback on and people are accepting. So tell us about how you shaped that within there, or I just answered it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think all queer people need to see, in media in general, not just in books, they need to see both sides of this. Parents can for sure not be supportive, but there is also the other side of it where they can be very accepting and they can be very loving. And I think Muslim kids and brown kids especially need to see this, because I think there is this idea that, all Muslim people or all brown people are just like not accepting and they're very strict. And there's like 2 billion Muslim people in the world. So as I was writing the book, I remember I actually had a conversation with one of my friends and I said, do you think people will find it unrealistic that, these parents are reacting like this? And then, because Honey has like this experience at the mosque towards the end of the book. And I was like, do you think people will find this unrealistic? And my friend said, like, like sometimes you have to write aspirationally because people need to see you know, what things can be like. And I thought that was really smart. So yeah, I want to write aspirationally because for me that is what like writing romance is, right? It's an
Yeah,
aspiration, it's a romanticization.
absolutely. And to be fair, regardless of whether it's brown people that are complaining, it's more than enough white people out there that have got a problem with it as well, isn't it? So
Exactly.
it's not targeted at, one race, one religion, or one culture. So yeah, okay, amazing. Um, and some of those dynamics as well. I loved the sister relationship as well as that progressed, and how it started with a, and this is most definitely my story. Growing up in a house, my sister's about 8 years older than me, fighting at every turn, challenging at every turn. My sister moves out when I came out to my. It's a different part of the story, but when I came out to my parents, my sister was suddenly, now that we weren't in the same house, the most supportive person in the world. She had my back on everything, and actually I really related to that part of the story, which, when she starts talking about, we're not in a competition anymore, it's not about impressing our parents, just how she had her back throughout that as well. And then it flipped on itself when she started having a conversation and challenging her dad around attending the wedding and things like that. And I thought, oh, it's just really lovely to see how, even at the start of the book, my sister's going to get me on this. Like, she's got a piece of information over me. So at the end, this relationship just formed so beautifully. It was really, really lovely to see. I don't think there's a question there. It was just more of a. Actually, it was a really beautiful dynamic and growth throughout the book to see, as well as the parent side and the acceptance, like just how beautifully her sister accepted her and supported her and stomped into school and put the head the headmistress into place. So that was really, really, really lovely. So trying to think of what other questions I have here. There is loads of bits of paper. Actually, I think, do you know what? I think most of my little bits around the community pieces and the religion have answered there. Um, are there any hidden things in the book that you've put in there to push extra boundaries or to challenge even further than you did in the Henna Wars?
Um, I think yes. I think one way that I kind of push boundaries that I didn't in the Henna Wars is there are like pieces of dialogue that are completely in Bengali. And I didn't do that in the Henna Wars. And actually, when I was writing this book, I had even more dialogue in Bengali. And then I went back and I thought about because when I write in Bengali, I think about how like the character is perceiving language. So you'll notice usually when there is Bengali, it's because the main character is not actually speaking the language that is being spoken to them, or it's because they're code switching. Those are the only two reasons. Because otherwise, if they're speaking Bengali to their parents, it'll be in English because it's the language that is familiar with them.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting because with the Henna Wars, I did see a lot of people kind of getting annoyed that there wasn't like a glossary or there weren't kind of words that were explained. And I was kind of like, okay, cool. So let me go even further with this book where there's like entire sentences and you don't necessarily understand it. And there's also no glossary and there's also like no translation and people can just deal with that.
But you've written it. I'm just trying to think of a time where I saw that and thought, I don't even need to know the words. I kind of can guess what's happening here. When they're in the headmaster or the headmistress's office, and she pushes back, and I think she swears, and her mum steps in and kind of speaks to her in Bengali, and you don't even need to know it. You could tell it was a very much a calm down, stop, don't embarrass yourself here kind of line where it was coming through. So I don't feel I necessarily needed to have the full contents of it there. It's what every mother would be telling you to, or every parent would be. I think it was a mum, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If I remember, it was, every parent would be telling you to do at that moment. So yeah, I don't think you needed to, but yeah, a great challenge. Amazing. Well, thank you ever so much for spending some time with us. And I'm guessing, is there more on the horizon?
Yes, there is. next year I have a book that is a little bit different from what I've written so far. It's a historical. It's called A Million to One. So it's about four girls who board the Titanic in 1912, and they try to pull off a heist to steal a rare jewel encrusted collection of poems by Omar Khayyam. And obviously, you know, we know what happens on the Titanic, so it's a bit challenging for them. Um, it's also sapphic. So there's like a romantic subplot. It's been super fun to work on that. And then the year after that, I have my third YA rom com, which is called Do Not Fall in Love, and it's about this Bangladeshi Irish girl who enters this Great British Bake Off style baking competition, and she's competing against her ex, who she still kind of has feelings for, and also another competitor that she's developing feelings for.
Okay, so busy. That actually,
Yes.
I really like the sound of that last one. Actually, anywhere there's competition and okay, yeah, that'll be really interesting. I can't wait for that. Cool. Well, thank you ever so much, and hopefully we'll get to catch up again on those ones soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really great speaking to you.
Anytime, anytime.